Welcome back everybody for another video of Virtual Warfare, a text-based roleplay fighting tutorial series. So this is part 2 of the difference between New World and Old World. I had to split the video up because the video was actually getting pretty long. As you can see, the first video is about the interpretations of New World and Old World. And this video is going to be about the Reformation of New World and Old World. Before I continue, I'm going to say, before I used the interpretation of others and added a little bit of my own. Now, I'm going to use Virtual Warfare's interpretations and then add a little bit of common understanding known in roleplay fighting. Old World does indeed cause players to withhold their stance or bio, and also only needing to state what the abilities are and what they actually do. But also, players don't have to be specific or precise when it comes to stating forms of measurement. They are allowed to give a general description of things and leave the rest up for a general interpretation. An example, instead of stating distance between two characters, simply denoting striking distance is enough to generalize the distance between two people. This is how it used to be in the old days. Also, instead of stating a specific amount of force, simply stating enough force to attack or block was sufficient. This is also how it used to be in the old days. And instead of stating an accurate notation of speed, stating vampire speed or dragon speed or any type of creature speed that the person was using gave a general verification of how fast someone was moving. And again, this is how it used to be in the old days. As far as turns in Old World, all gameplay is based off of turns alone, not time or an action-for-action gameplay. Players have a general amount of in-game time to where their characters are allowed to prep attacks within a limit of time. Pretty much, the interpretation I gave for Old World is exactly how it used to be in the old days. In Old World, players are only allowed to respond or commit a counter during the time frame of an opponent's attack. An example, player 1 draws his sword, chants his spell, and projects his magic. Player 2 cannot commence an attack or counter during the drawing of the sword or chanting of the spell, but only during the time frame of the projected attack. However, player 2 can say, as player 1 draws their sword, player 2 draws their sword, and when player 1 chants, player 2 charges up, and when player 1 projects their energy, player 2 projects their energy to cancel it out and continue with dashing towards player 1 to attack or continue a combo or whatever the case may be. Player 2 can react to the procedures of player 1 in the roleplay, but player 2 cannot interrupt the attack, but only attempt to stop it after the attack has been projected. Once player 2 goes, the scenario for that gameplay is sealed. Neither player can go back to that time frame as an attempt to stop it from happening. An example, player 1 can go, seeing player 2 charge up, instead of projecting my energy, I stab my sword into the ground and cast another ability. This concept actually belongs to another system, but using it for Old World would actually be called space-time modding. Therefore, player 1 can only go, seeing the class of energy, he noticed player 2 dash forward after that, and standing his ground, he attempted to block and counter afterwards. And after such, again, player 2 must react to the counter of player 1 and nothing before it. Through this system, now it will be legitimate to have abilities that give you an energy boost every 2 turns, because each player can only react to the action at the end of each turn, not before it, which would cause an interruption. And once an interruption is introduced, the system of the gameplay changes by making the element of time a main element and factor for the gameplay. And this concludes Virtual Warfare's interpretation on the Old World style gameplay of roleplay fighting. In New World, players must indeed explain nearly every single thing that their character has or exhibits, from a character's height to the tensile strength of their weapon. These things must be scientifically precise and accurate, but not necessarily always have a numeric value, except for items. Virtual warfare always dealt with detailing the accurate distance, speed, force, energy, time, etc. to verify a logical, fair, and authentic winner. Also, as stated earlier, the process of a character's ability must be stated to magnify the essence of time and effort, or it would be known as an auto. This is the New World system that Virtual Warfare claims to have created, as New World is just a term used for a style that's not like the old style of roleplay fighting. As for turns, Virtual Warfare deals with virtual time, in-game time, or the time within the roleplay. It is a must for players to state and keep track of the time frames and durations of their actions, to simulate and calculate the concept of time. Through this concept, the act that involves needing to input accurate measurements for a legitimate roleplay fight becomes a consistent gameplay and not just used as a form of writing. Instead of the gameplay being based off of turns, which will allow the concept of having abilities that activate every 2 turns, Virtual Warfare is based off the concept of interruptions, which is not really a concept at all, but actually just a synopsis that happens in the gameplay from it being structured from an action for action system, unlike Old World, which is based from a turn for turn structured gameplay. In this gameplay, players are allowed to commence an attack or action during any time frame of their opponent and interrupt their course of action. It can be done while they are drawing their weapon, chanting a spell, or right before they are about to project their power. This is why the gameplay is based off of virtual time, as the accurate measurements of speed, distance, force, etc. will solidify the claim or course of action being made. An example, it takes me 500 milliseconds to draw my sword, 1 second to chant a spell, and 500 milliseconds to project my energy out. In all, it took a reasonable 2 seconds to perform my technique, and you can verify how long each action took. However, adding inaccurate data of the aforementioned measurements to the time frame of these actions will either cause their entire action to be God mode or overpower or even extremely weak. For an example, it takes 2 seconds for the entire technique to be completed, but the projection of the energy is traveling at Mach 3 speed from 20 feet away with 1,000 megatons of explosive power. This is obviously overpowered in God mode from a standard MP rule. However, if taking 5 seconds to chant and considering the effects of inertia when projecting energy because of the loss of power it will hold, making the time to project it even longer, making it 2 seconds, the end result of my power being at Mach 3 with 1,000 megatons would be more plausible and fair. Because the more power my character wants to dish out, the more time and energy my character has to spend. And this is fair because my opponent always have a fair and equal opportunity to interrupt it and do the same. This is Virtual Warfare. This is New World style of roleplay fighting.